This is the Game Master Roundtable, and in this episode, we're going to dive into a very touchy subject, artificial intelligence. So please, leave your thoughts and ideas in the comments. Let's get into it. Welcome to the GM Roundtable. I'm Rob Mulligan, the founder of Cybernation Uncensored, and today with me I have OG Game Master Seth Skorkowsky. I have my partner in crime at Cybernation Uncensored, GM Nigel, who's also a community manager there, and we have my boy Josh, the dreaded GM. Although, Josh, I still got my dreads. I think they're
mine here. They're in a box over there.
That's what I was going to ask. Is that at least you still have them nearby?
I still have them.
That's so funny. Yeah. But yeah, everybody, welcome to the GM Roundtable. Look, every episode we go over a topic about tabletop role-playing games and things within the gaming community. We typically go around the table just giving tips and advice and tricks and things like that. This episode is a little bit different in that we're not hitting a topic where we want to give you tips and advice as much as we're hitting a touchy subject that we want to just discuss in general. I have a bunch of ideas, questions, and things we're going to go over, as well as I collected a bunch of questions and ideas from the community around online, and we just want to dive in. Today's topic is about AI, and as you know, it can be very touchy. There's a lot of debates and just people that on both ends of the spectrum when it comes to AI, and just all the little details within it of how it's used, and just, you know, we just got to dive into this subject and go over it. Before we get started, let's do like we always do. Let's roll a 1d20 and kind of put an initiative order to this chaos, so we can kind of speak in order here. I'll get a 14.
7.
12. 15.
What was that, Nigel? Sorry.
12.
And Josh, what was it?
15.
15. Okay, perfect. And look, Josh, you're going to start it off. You're the highest in initiative right here. Let's do it. Let's just do a basic intro question to it. You don't need to elaborate, paragraphs of information, but you also don't need to just simply answer in one word or one sentence. You can elaborate a little bit here, but let's start it off with the general question here when it comes to AI: tool or trash? What do you think?
When AI first hit the scene, I was one of the first people to make a video about AI on my YouTube channel. It was like within the first month or so, and I wasn't sure then. And I would say that since then things have changed, and what I will say is it is completely subjective. One man's trash is another man's treasure. Everyone will have a different opinion, right? What matters is what you decide is whether it's trash or treasure. For me, I think it is, in a lot of ways, neither, because my treasures are connecting with people, coming together and having human experiences and growing my own skill set. I do think that there are applications when it comes to its ability to be used for tabletop role-playing games and developing my skills, especially skills where I lack, or places where I feel, uninclined to develop a skill with another person by asking them questions. I think that there's definitely things that, as a game master, a storyteller, that I can see using it as a tool. But with the things that I've been doing, especially these days, I think it's important for me to grow my own skill set and to also find a way to be a human with other people. So all that to say that we are stories that consume stories, that love telling stories. And so this AI, we all have different outlooks on it, what it means to us and our story and the stories that we share. So I don't think it is a villainous thing. I don't think it's a good thing. It has so many different things that it touches in this world, because one thing that we've got to consider is the environmental impact, the ethical impact when it comes to like politics and stuff like that. The reason it's so highly charged as a topic is because it touches everything. and it's because we apply meaning to it.
Oh, yeah. That's a great answer. And look, some of the things you kind of touched on there are upcoming questions. It's awesome to kind of see, how our minds are kind of in the same place, even within the community and stuff. And you'll see as we get into these questions, but great answer. Myself, I'm next in line on the initiative here, but as far as tool or trash, I definitely think it's a tool. But I'm with you. I think there's a lot of caveats in the way it's used and kind of what it can be used for, the different forms of AI. And then also there's that sort of ethical, moral dilemma. And we'll get into that a little bit down the line. There's definitely some community questions about that. But when it comes to like environmental stresses, when it comes to protecting IP of other artists and creators and AI using that, there's just a lot of moral and ethical dilemmas there and discussions and just debates that can happen. And I personally find myself debating it both ways. Like I can easily start defending it as much as I can start attacking it, and I can find reasons on both. But I definitely feel it's a tool, but it's evolving. It's developing. I think we're in early stages, as you know. It's nonstop developing, and we'll see where it goes. But I've got some examples on why I feel that way, and we'll get into a little more details as we go. There's other questions that come along, but I definitely think it's more of a tool than trash. But again, it has some ethical and moral dilemmas there and stuff that, little details that should be discussed. And I think everyone's going to have a different, and I'm not saying everybody here, I think everyone in general, players, GMs, things like that, everyone's going to have their own sort of thoughts on it based on what they feel is moral or ethical, and also where they're coming from. Are you an artist? Are you a musician? Are you a writer? Or are you someone that has, none of those talents to a degree, and AI is your tool because you don't have that? And then are you further not developing those because you're only using AI? There's just so much debate that can happen around this topic, but I definitely think it's more of a tool than trash. So next up, Nigel, what do you think?
So two things. AI is super broad. It has a lot of facets to it that necessarily need to be broken down, but in general, and apparently sometimes, depending on who you talk to, this is a controversial take. I think AI is a tool in the sense that Photoshop is a tool. Like if I was a nefarious individual who wanted to steal someone's art and remove their copyright and claim it as my own, I can do that in Photoshop and then claim that art as my own. But no one says Photoshop is the evil. They say I'm evil. I'm the asshole who's doing that. So for me, AI gets too much flack with people kind of stealing or pretending to be artists or any of those dilemmas. AI is the tool that allowed it, but it didn't make the individual who's doing it.
Yeah,
it didn't
sense.
create the person who had the intention to do those things. So as far as what it is a tool like a gun or a saw or anything else that we use, and it can be done with good or bad intentions, and depending on who does it, it will be one way or the other. Now, as far as environmental impact and the other things, obviously that's a whole nother thing, but as it is, I just see it as a tool, and if it's a tool that helps you, then, have at it. As long, it's that old argument of like, your rights end where someone else's rights begins. Like, as long as you're not stepping on anyone, as long as it's not actively harming anyone, then what is the downside to it? Again, power consumption, environmental on the side. The thing is, AI is just going to keep getting better. It's kind of proven that with its track record. It started out how it started out, and then it just started getting better. It started becoming more useful. As a very concrete real-world example, I'm a photographer. AI retouching has saved my workflow. I save hours and hours on unnecessary, like removing blemishes on people's portraits and everything. Like that takes hours to do. Now it takes a few minutes, and I'm still doing all the work. I'm still the one behind the camera setting up the lighting and everything, but it takes away a part of my workflow that I would rather not have in my workflow. Retouching is a basic part of portrait photography that is extremely time consuming. And if I can save my time, I'm going to do it. So, it really depends on who's using it and what you're using it for. But at the end of the day, it is a tool. Whether it's done for good or not depends on the person, not the tool.
That makes sense. Seth, what do you think?
Actually, pretty much along the lines of Nigel. It's a tool. And Photoshop was also going to be the same example I was going to use for it, which, that hit the seed, that changed everything. And at the time, a lot of people were extremely critical of, like, well, you're no longer a real photographer sort of thing. And since then, it's just kind of become the accepted. My thoughts on it, because one, I am a novelist. I am a creator. I do see a lot of the ways that people used as just being reckless or pointless or a lot of that, because you do have the zealots that are just insufferable, who think that it's the thing you should always use for absolutely everything, and they don't see why you would not. And I don't use it really for anything outside of Photoshop and stuff. I will use whatever their tools are, because they keep integrating that. That's neat. For wholesale creation, I can see some use for personal use, but the most part, I think a lot of what still turns out is the philosophy of, if it's not worth your time to write it, why should it be worth my time to read it, sort of thing. So it's a lot of the use that people are having with it that I do have a lot of problems with. But like when it comes to certain things like data analysis and medical stuff, how it can see like tumors, long before a human being could actually identify like breast cancer and stuff like that. That's amazing. I love that. So yes, there's uses. No, it's not going away. But at the same time, I think a lot of the ways that people try to use it is not good. So I'm pretty down on AI, mostly because of how bad people have been using it, and that kind of turns me off on a lot of it. So
that makes sense.
It's here. We're not getting rid of it. So
yeah, no, exactly. And it's funny because we're going to touch on that a little bit down the line here, but you're absolutely right. It's something we have to deal with. So again, why it's such a great topic to discuss, right? But Josh, over to you for the next thing here. And Seth kind of mentioned this. We've all kind of lightly mentioned this on the first one, but let's just reiterate this and then maybe explain a little bit about the next part, which is do you use AI in any capacity? How do you actually use AI in your gameplay or daily life, or do you use AI in any capacity? And then what are the ethical and moral dilemmas that you see with it? Yeah, let's just keep it at that. Yeah, let's keep it at that. So how do you use AI in any capacity? And then what are your moral and ethical dilemmas that you have or you deal with or that you think about with it?
I use AI very sparingly. In fact, I kind of use it as if I would use it with talking with anyone else. Like if I was to ask someone a question about an opinion or what they think, it's kind of like it's like getting a secondhand opinion from someone. So to answer to that, I might ask it a question here or there if I want to talk to it, but it's almost like bouncing a tennis ball against the wall. It's like, hey, what do you think of this? And then they might give me an answer back. Back in the day with that video that I made, I got it to generate NPC names. I got it to generate encounters. It's like, oh, this is crazy. Like this might have like the opportunity to change TTRPGs as we see it. But what I found is that linking it to the second half of this question, I heard someone say this, I think it was either Simon Sinek or Dr. K, which is that it's very much like how you would treat the stairs and an elevator. If you stop using the stairs, you're not going to be using the muscles that you need to use the stairs. You need a good balance of both. So I think I tend to use the stairs more than I use the elevator. With most things that I'm doing, but I also don't want to lose my ability to know how an elevator works. So I would say that I tend to lean more towards using the stairs than the elevator, but I usually don't use it. And it's because the thing that I'm trying to do with my game mastering or the business that I'm building or the community that I'm leading, I'm very aware of the convenience tax or losing touch with people. Because one thing that comes with AI that I've heard people say is that if you don't use AI, you will be left behind. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be left behind. And I don't know if I have to rush or try and race anyone to be ahead of anyone. Sometimes we learn a lot in the monotonous or the mundane. And I like to think of myself as more of a knowledge worker or a philosopher, because that's what you do when you sit down to run a game. You have to see different story perspectives and storylines and stuff like that. So to speak to it as a whole, I don't see it as a tool or trash. I see it as both, because I need to see it as both. As a storyteller, I have to understand all opinions. So when it comes to everything ethical, again, environmental, political, and everything like that, my focus is always trying to understand where people are coming from so that I can bridge or understand both parts of the story. I think I answered it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Hopefully.
Absolutely. No, and myself, I use AI. For me, it's much like you said, I'm more so working the stairs rather than always running to the elevator, use it or lose it is the saying that comes to mind, obviously. I use it basically in place of search engines, which is like the most basic of things. That kind of, instead of, going through pages and pages of Google, I use the AI and that'll do it for me and give me a consensus and other options. And I can even ask for deeper options within that, but it just saves time on that. And then as kind of a bit of an editor, those that don't know, I'm a filmmaker. I produce a lot of films. I'm a published comic book creator. I've written a poetry book. I've been a touring musician. I've dabbled in many different industries. I run over 100 websites, a marketing company since the 90s. And, when AI first kind of came out and as it's developing, it's been this sort of polishing factor or editor factor where, like Nigel said with his photography, it saves hours and hours of going over and trying to just do the monotonous stuff that does nothing towards the creative aspect. Like, I'm still creating. I wrote everything. I laid everything out in our EPK for this film, or I wrote this song. I'm not doing anything within AI, but within the writing of, for instance, an EPK for our recent film, we'll run that through AI. And sure enough, it caught a couple grammar issues and a misspelled word that I totally missed. That was read underlined with the normal spell check that I just visually missed going through. I must have read it so many times that you just don't see it. And, if you don't have partners that can go over it, and, to be human is to err, right? Or you don't have, a team or a company to kind of go over and produce these things or do the final polishing touches. That's where I kind of lean on AI a little bit to find my mistakes, my grammar issues, spelling issues, things like that. And it's worked. As far as, use it or lose it, I definitely don't rely on it for anything beyond checking my work. I definitely think that a lot of people are going to be not just left behind because of not using AI and the evolution of AI and how it is going to affect everything in society, but also the fact that people don't, they don't rely. The people that do get into AI, like we said, lose it by not using it. I think that it becomes a replacement rather than kind of like a crutch or a help or something. Like, I look at it more like kind of a backup help versus something that's leading the way. And for me, like, the ethical moral dilemma, obviously, like, it uses a ton of water and energy and resources, and that's a huge issue, especially with inflation, economy, just all the issues in the world, right? So there's that side of it, but then there's also the whole thing about AI kind of pulling information from the creatives so it can create. And it might not plagiarize or take something specific, but it's absolutely taking ideas, information, concepts, and things from the public, from everything that is available out there in the public, and then maximizing that to give you something that's quote unquote original, which is pretty much the equivalent of humans. When you create something that's influenced by all the things you've seen or experienced, it's the same exact thing with AI. I think the hard thing is it's a cold program, right? It's a machine, so to speak. It doesn't have the human element to the creative, even though the process might be very similar in its getting influence and then getting the end result. So I can kind of debate that a little bit on both ways, but being a touring musician in the past, being a writer, a comic book creator, a filmmaker, I can debate it on the creative side, like, well, fuck AI, like I don't want it taking my creative ideas off the internet or things I've put out to create its own twists on it and outdo me without even having to put in any of the creative effort. It's like just a cold program just scraping the internet and just grabbing the best of the best and trying to, you know, calculate what kind of answer it might need for your question. But it reminds me of some things. Like back in the day, I'll just use the musician side as an example, is back in the day, I remember when DJs went from spinning records to the digital turntables, and that was a huge dilemma. You're not a fucking DJ, you're not matching beats, like it's all digital, and now you're just pressing samples, and that wasn't even a recorded sample, that was a digitally created sound, and like that was a thing. And then, you know, and then when Napster and LimeWire came out, that was a huge deal to us musicians too, because you're like, how are you going to make your money off your music? MP3s are fucking free now. Everybody can just go download them. Record labels are ripping you off. The only way I can make money is charging $100 on a live show or $50 for a t-shirt. Now all my fans are complaining, and like, what am I going to do? And it was kind of scary at first, and then sure enough, over time, it's evolved into what the music industry is now. And there's still musicians, there's still people making money, there's still people touring, and you know, but things evolve a little. Things are going more digital. So again, like I think I could debate it both sides, but when I look at the history of similar things and like the evolution of technology, I can also say that like we're in early stages, and of course there's going to be some turmoil, but let's see where it goes. I could see it becoming, you know, is this just another industrial revolution where like, you know, factories are replaced with like automated robots to build cars, and then you're like, well, no more jobs. Well, it evolves into other jobs and other things. It's just, life isn't just going to end as we know it. It's going to keep evolving. And then it also reminds me of like the novelty of like made in America, right? So like even as AI goes, I could totally see, and I'm not a Luddite that I'm going to be like anti-AI or whatever, but I do feel there's kind of a community or I don't know, a movement towards that like either don't like AI or they're going to lean into human made, the same way nowadays people might be like made in America versus cheaper overseas stuff or something. That's kind of how I could see it evolving, is like even if it gets perfected, there's probably still going to be people that want that sort of human touch or human made items, you know? But again, I think that's an ethical, moral dilemma that I don't think will last forever. I think it's right now, but I think as it evolves, that also might evolve, and we'll just have to see. But Nigel, what do you think? Do you use AI in any capacity? I know you kind of touched on it earlier with the photography, but what about the ethical and moral dilemma?
So, yeah, with my, as far as creative pursuits, photography, it saves time. It doesn't take away from the creative process. Retouching is a very annoying part of having to do photography, specifically portraits. For tabletop gaming, I run a lot of personal games. I run one different system every day, except for Sundays.
Oh, did we lose Josh? Oh, there he is.
Just a hiccup.
No, wait.
Gotcha.
I'll wait for him to get back. Okay, so I run one system, different system every day, for Sundays for my personal games. Sometimes it's just useful to have Gen AI show me what I'm describing. Like if I have an NPC and I want him to look a certain way and feel a certain way, sometimes it's useful to just put that into a Gen AI prompt to see, you know, is what I'm describing looking like what I want it to look like? Are my words translating into what I have in my head? And then he shows up and says, yeah, okay, that's roughly what I want it to look like. And if I want to send a rough image to my players, you know, I'm not paid, I'm not professionally doing it, I'm not making money off of it. I don't see the problem if I just use a bit of Gen AI, show them, hey, visually, this is what I'm imagining. Here's what he looks like. Here's the big ugly you're dealing with. You know, again, that's an entirely different conversation if I'm making money off of it because of the whole, how is AI trained? Is it stealing art? But if you're doing it personally, like I said, no one's getting hurt. It's just us, a bunch of friends who want to play a game and want the visual look on what we're all dealing with. I think that's fine. As far as moral, ethical stuff, I think the number one thing that I have against AI is the amount of power it consumes. But if you think about that, yeah, it's consuming a lot of power. just like all technology that's in its infancy, consumes a lot of power, takes a lot of space. The first computers were gigantic, consumed an unnecessary amount of power just to fill up an entire room worth to compute very basic things.
Yeah.
We as a species are pretty good at minimizing things over time. Like, we take things that weren't huge and unnecessarily large, and then we find a way to make it smaller and more convenient. And I think it's in the same trajectory. At some point, someone is going to figure out how to make that smaller, how to make its footprint lesser. And at the end of the day, climate change and everything happening, maybe it's time to look at how we generate that energy in the first place. Like its global footprint is a result of how we're getting our energy, fossil fuels and oil and the like. Is there an argument to finally accept that nuclear energy is cleaner than most other forms of energy? Is there an argument to be made that we need more renewable energy? It stems in a deeper problem. Yes, it's consuming a lot of power, but is that only a problem because of how we generate that power? Like most things with climate change, the amount of power we're consuming is only a problem because of where that power is coming from. And if we can change that, if we can change how we produce our power, does it still become an issue? Does it still become an issue how much power it uses if the power we're generating is now a much cleaner and renewable source?
Absolutely.
So I think, AI does have a lot of ethical and moral issues that need to be clarified, discussed, and maybe at some point even the law might catch up with it. But it's not the only thing. It's not the top of mind thing necessarily to come out of this discussion. There are things that it's touching on that maybe it's just making us as a people finally ask those questions of, why is all our energy like this? Why are we doing things this way? In that regard, it's still a tool. It makes us question how we do things and how we can make things better.
Good point. No, to speak on your energy thing real quick, and not to dive down a conspiracy rabbit hole, but the reasoning is because JP Morgan could not put a meter on Tesla's free energy. But don't just look that stuff up. Let's not dive into a conspiracy theory. Seth, what do you think? Do you use AI in any capacity, and what's the ethical or moral dilemma to you?
The only ways I've found myself using AI is, when I'm using like Photoshop stuff, it's really great at helping select the actual targets, that sort of thing, which is just enhancement of the old algorithms that we had. Like when you had brought up the spell checks and stuff, they're, it's to be no different than the advanced spell checks and all that stuff, because I remember people get mad when you say this. The human brain is so screwy that you are actually incapable of seeing your own typos. Because you know what it's supposed to say, and your brain will actually twist reality to the point that you cannot see your own mistakes because you see what you're intending to see. And that's when you get to like all sorts of like how our perception and cognition work. So stuff like spell checks and having to have an external editor look at your work to point out flaws that for some reason you are biologically blind to. That stuff's great. That's not the creation. That's the tool of having essentially a proofreader or somebody come and be like, hey, that looks wrong, right? Like, oh crap, yeah. Yeah. And it's like, in writing circles, what are the big jokes? And it's really funny because it doesn't matter if they're like a small indie, I just self-published, or I'm a New York Times bestseller. If you want to find a typo in your book, publish it, and then open it up to a random page, and you're about guaranteed to find a typo. And it is the most horrific thing ever. But so those tools, I think, are good. Because a lot of the big tech companies are trying to force feed us AI, and I will see a lot of the ways that it's essentially like, well, shit, I didn't ask for it to be on my Google. I didn't ask for it to be on my Facebook, but okay, it's trying to sell me. I have enjoyed summaries on giant email chains, such as over like the 2 months, Rob, that you were like, hey, do you want to come on the show? And I'm all like, yeah. Then I forget and blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, that AI summary thing is like really freaking handy, mostly because like it helps me scroll down and find it. But like with Facebook recently, they made it to where like it tries to AI rewrite my posts.
I've seen that recently. Yeah, I get the same thing.
It's weird.
It is.
And one of the things though I've noticed is the homogenization of language when people talk about AI speak. Because I've never used the Facebook, hey, let's rewrite your post in a punchier way, but I have enjoyed going, that's not what I sound like. And, in the world of, I hate the word influencer, but, if I'm an online personality, and what I always tell people that when they want to get into YouTube, the secret of YouTube is you. The topic brings them the first time. After that, they want to follow the person. And if I was to use AI to make it punchier or easier to write stuff, I'm actually removing the one thing that I have as a creator that makes me interesting is me. And it's my unique voice. It's my goofy ass way I phrase stuff and that sort of thing. And I feel that if you rely too much on it, and it's the elevator versus stairs thing. And by the way, Josh, I love that comparison because it is one of those, atrophying muscles that I think if people rely on it for a lot of just, the simple things like their social media, it actually loses the one thing that they actually needed. But it is sometimes really great to have to come in and say, hey, somewhere in you trying to write this, you've got 3 fragments of sentences that have been strung together into incomprehensible gibberish. Is that is that what you wanted? And because how many times have we written like a tweet and then you look up and you suddenly see like the 2 tweets before it you tried to start writing that somehow artifacts? So you're like, I look like I'm drunk. It's like, what the hell is this nonsense?
It's true.
So, but those are pretty much the tools that can help do it. My ethical issues with it, which I've got plenty, is a lot of it is passing off stuff as being created. That really does rub me the wrong way. When with what I do, I use a lot of stock pictures in my videos, like a lot, and I try to avoid AI ones. Mostly because it's not worth it. But sometimes they're really freaking hard, even on paid-for sites, to get stock pictures to parse out the stuff that's made with AI, and that pisses me off to no end. Because if you ever try to do any sort of image searching now, it's just about useless because it has been flooded with imitators. And I think one of the biggest tools that AI really does need is AI detection tools to really start sorting the wheat from the chaff. Because yes, there are good uses, but I think a lot of people are trying to make it just it does everything for you, and we're just going to atrophy, and that's
Absolutely.
boring. And if somebody wants to make music, or they want to write a book, or they want to make a movie, or whatever else, it's that human factor is what makes it actually good. And whatever tools they use are fine. Whether you're a DJ that's literally grabbing some old records and you are mixing the beats, or you're doing Deadmau5, and as he puts it, I am drawing music because I can't read music and I'm just kind of drawing it. Both of those are fine. But there is the creative process. There's that personal voice, even the parts that are quirky and weird. Because if you just hit a button, it's all going to sound the same and nothing separates you from everyone else. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. Like I said, I don't use it. Usually it's like I get force fed it, and then I just find it kind of weird. But then when it comes to the environmental stuff, I also see the same thing of if we are looking at, well, we've got plenty of energy until all of a sudden something comes in and we realize that we do not have infinite energy, and we do realize the actual costs. And then we realize that, yes, we actually are on a ration system versus infinite. And we have to reevaluate. I get all that stuff too. And I think that is still going to be one of those inevitable steps to cause a lot of the hard stuff of like, hey, if we want cars, we're going to have to invest in infrastructure for roads. If we want AI to do all of this amazing stuff that it's going to be capable of, we need to invest in the infrastructure for energy and the environment to not destroy that and to allow it. So, because a lot of stuff that costs a lot of money, people have to be forced to do it. Because it's just easier to say, like, why should we spend money if we're going to be making it? And it's like, okay, now we actually need to do all of our nuclear and solar and wind and all of that. Now we need to actually do all these things that would cost a lot of money, because the people that own that, they don't want to spend money. They just want to make it.
Right.
But like with the automobile, at some point somebody had to say, I'm going to start setting up a bunch of gas stations, and I'm probably not going to make a lot of money at first. But all of a sudden, we live in a world where I've got a gas station very regularly, and electric vehicles have had to do that. Same thing. It just to create just highway infrastructure costs trillions of dollars, but probably worth it. So
Right.
I think that we are at the point of, we are in those early automobiles. They haven't invented the stoplight yet. I think that the first Texas highway had a rule that stumps couldn't be larger than 8 inches. I want you to think about this. This is for the road. You couldn't have a stump in the road higher than 8 inches, which is just crazy.
Yeah.
But we're at that stage when it comes to AI. They are trying to figure out how are we going to have to change stuff to handle this? How are we going to have to create, pedestrian laws? How are we going to have to create roads? And we're going to have to buy land from Farmer Joe so we can have a road that goes straight between here and here. And now we have to do a lot of stuff. But people are still buying their Model Ts and then getting mad because the world isn't set up for it yet. And I think that's kind of where we are. It's happening. I can hate on AI all day long. Trust me, if I could get you a loan, we could open up a bottle of whatever you want, and I could get drunk railing on it with you. But it's here. And we also need to look at, how do we need to change the world to accommodate this? And because what we have right now is not working, and it is not going to work until we do change a lot of the infrastructure. And that way the stuff like water and energy and all that stuff becomes not an issue. So that's kind of my thoughts on it, of like, it's not that I'm against it in principle, but it is like, this isn't suited for right now.
Right. No, I'm with you on that. It's got to evolve, because it's going to displace a bunch of jobs. I mean, look at the layoffs that have happened so far on white collar levels, like all the computing jobs and stuff, right? And eventually with robots, it's going to get into warehouses and other things down the line. Like, it has all that potential. But I do. What was that?
Well, one of my favorite things people have brought up with it is, everyone who's an expert in a field can explain why AI can't replace them. But then they think that it can replace everybody else.
Right.
But it's like, but somebody who is an expert in a field is like, no, don't trust that, because it actually does suck. I can tell you all the ways that this is wrong. Then they turn around and they use that to help them with everything else. Like,
Right.
In every field you're trying to replace people in, those actual experts can bring up verifiable, like, this crap is wrong. We're trying to use it in a way it's not ready to do yet. But one thing it does bring me joy is, a lot of the jobs that it can actually displace the easiest are usually those white collar decision makers that are laying off thousands of people. It's like, a lot of times it's like, AI can do that one a lot easier than the actual creative part.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, no,
So,
and I think like the rush to it, like I love that you're saying like you feel like we're not ready for it as it is, and I get that feeling too, and I get a consensus of that from, you know, the community, and I'm going to go over their comments here in just a moment. You'll kind of feel that feedback, right? But whether it's a race to, like, as they always say, beat China, to the AI, to the, you know, or it's to just maximize profits for all these companies that are racing to it, whatever it is, it's displacing jobs, it's using energy, it's just doing things exponentially that, like, I feel we're not prepped for. It's moving faster than we're prepping for. And like you said, we're at that point where, like, well, we'll allow at least up to 8 inches of stumps in our roads, but let's keep going, you know, like that's kind of crazy. Let's maybe think about that before we keep moving forward. But and then the other thing too, you said about, you know, needing AI to tell what's AI. It's funny you say that, because I was watching, I forget who it was. It wasn't Elon, but it was like one of the AI people like that runs a company, but he no longer works with the AI. I forget who it is, like one of the 7 godfathers of AI. It's like these main guys that kind of created it back in the day or whatever. And one of them was saying that the future of AI is everyone is not only going to have their own AI tools to use, and it's just going to be abundant in apps built into programs like, you know, in Photoshop and things, and like everything's going to have AI tools within it and stuff, but everyone's going to basically have their own personal AI, like that maybe you're born with, like a social security number that is going to help you through life to point out that's AI, that's real, that's human, don't do that, you know, like it's going to see things you don't see within its own programming. And that just kind of got crazy to me when I started thinking about that, going down that rabbit hole. But yeah, I could totally see that happening. You know, you have your little hologram. Yeah, exactly. You know, so we'll see how that develops. But yeah.
Yeah, then my fear is like, well, how do they monetize it? It's kind of like the idea of like, well, you know, once we get cyber eyes, that's going to be awesome. Except you have to pay for the premium plan not to have pop-ups. You're like, oh yeah, wow, that got dystopian fast.
There's a meme that cracks me the fuck up. I was sharing it all the time when it first came out. It was like a couple years ago when AI was first getting popular, and it was like a guy sleeping and he like wakes up in a panic, but they took that video of him sleeping and waking up in a panic, and it says something like, you know, when you don't pay for ad blocker in your neural link, and it shows him sleeping, and he goes like, what was it? O'Reilly's. Like the commercial started playing, like he's sleeping. It's like, O'Reilly's, and starts going. He's like, what the fuck? Like, man, that is so funny, but so dystopianly true, if that's the way to word it. But yeah, I could say
this is how you get Skynet.
Exactly.
I tell you, of all the things that I feel is more relevant now, and it's disturbing, is the paranoia RPG. It how the computer is supposed to be treated, where it's like, hey guys, it's not evil, but it's like, imagine if you let Clippy run your world and all the stupid ass stuff Clippy does. And Mongoose actually just did a new edition. It's kind of updated that because AI is now out. And they're like, okay, imagine if ChatGPT ran your world. And sometimes it doesn't know what you're talking about. Sometimes it just hallucinates bullshit. And so I do see that as like that wonderful social commentary of, well, what if we actually did do that? How stupid and horrible would things be? So I think that the when we look at it, we see like, this is going to be that cyberpunk, or this is going to be like how Dune got rid of AI altogether, or Skynet. It's like, or it could be paranoia, which is just let's take this to the stupid extreme.
Oh, absolutely. But you know, it could easily go that route, considering how well, I hate being mean, but how stupid humans can be, right? Like, we're going to race China to the end, or race to the profit so fast, or, you know, that we're going to allow the stumps in the road, as you put it earlier with the early roads, right? So like, you got to have confidence in it, but I have very little confidence in a lot of humans out there in doing this right. Yeah.
That's exactly what we need to do, is like look towards us and not towards it, because we project, it almost reflects us, because it's filled with the things that we've created. It's filled with the language that we've created. It's filled with the stories that we've created, the art that we've created. So if we lose sight of ourselves, if we lose sight of each other, then yeah, we are going to end up in that direction of paranoia, which is quite literally like what it can spawn. So like, more than ever, it's important to learn how to be a human, to go and read philosophy books and do what we're doing here, and sit down and have a round table and have these conversations and not fight each other about it. Find a way to talk about it. Find a way to bridge together. There's a thing called neural coupling, which I know Seth probably might even know about, or might not know about, but also the things that you were saying about neuro like cognition and all that before, but and I'm going to use my swears now because I swear now. I fuck with. Go learn some neuroscience. Neural coupling is essentially like Pacific Rim. You know, it's how we become drift compatible. It's how we connect. We quite literally do this when we sit down with each other. We create a neural network with each other and we build a new brain in a sense. If we stop doing that because we are all so individually in our AI space or in spaces we want to be, or we disconnect because we go to the AI before we go to each other, then we will not have neural coupling. Like, we need to come together, even if it's uncomfortable, and have these conversations. Yeah. So
have you seen the videos? Speaking on what you just mentioned, and then I'll get into the community stuff. We'll move on. I got a few questions we'll blaze through, but just real quick, since we're kind of just casually talking about this at this point, and I'm loving where this is going too, by the way. But when you talk about the AI and, you know, relying on us, has anyone seen the videos that are kind of going viral out there about, you know, teachers complaining about Gen Z and Gen Alpha not being able to read or do math, and like 1% of the graduating class can actually read, and teachers are quitting all over the country in different places, and just like look up those videos on YouTube. It can be a bit depressing. Maybe it's dystopian. Maybe it's leaning into the negative a little more to kind of get that clickbait or something. But you know, I think where there's smoke, there's fire, at least to a certain degree. And there are a lot of teachers complaining about like students using AI to write their papers, to do things. And one teacher in particular talks about how she did a specific test in class or homework in class where she would make the students write and do it in front of her with no AI. And they were just horrible. They were all failing and doing really bad. And then she started getting complaints from parents talking about her like being too strict on the kids and all this, and she tried to talk to the parents about, well, they're using AI, I'm trying to get them to learn. And a lot of the parents' feedback was stuff like, well, you know, I'm the parent, you're the teacher, teach them. And like just real like cold, and like, I don't know, I'm trying to have faith that like, we're gonna lean on humans and this is gonna evolve properly, but it's hard to feel positive. And again, maybe it's the algorithm, maybe it's what they put out for clickbait and shit, right? But I do see a lot of young people relying on AI, not as a backup tool to polish what they already created, but literally to create something that then they put their name on. Like, I have friends, even my age and a little younger, that like will create songs with Sora or whatever that app, that AI is that does music, or first did. I know there's a few of them now. And they'll post it like, oh, this new song I made, and like, you know, proud of it and stuff. And being a musician that can play guitar, bass, drums, vocals, solo, acoustic, electronica, industrial rap group, heavy metal band, been on tour. Like, I see that shit and I'm like, you're not a musician, man. Stop talking like that, you know? And I just, because it's personal. But then I can see it like that's a tool that's evolving. I remember DJs complaining about the digital aspect. Am I that? Am I the grognard now? Like looking at these young kids like, Dad, you're not fucking doing it. I did it, you know? Like, so I could debate it both ways. But I do have a depressing outlook when I see those things about kids just absolutely relying on it and teachers complaining about it. Yeah.
Just to speak to that as well, because like it's really important. Well, I'm a parent. I'm not sure if anyone else is here a parent or not, but there's a book that I have on my shelf over there called Playful Parenting. And Playful Parenting is all about parenting through play, finding a way to play with kids through play and teaching through play. It's something as a game master that I've known for a long time. There's a really good example of it too if you've ever seen a show called Bluey. Bluey is a national treasure here down in Australia. It's world renowned. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. It's surprisingly deep and has a lot of really great lessons in it. But that is playful parenting. And when parents are saying, you're the teacher, you teach them, it takes a village. It's not just the teacher's role. There's many things that we need to do. And to speak back about the elevator and the stairs, we need to make sure that we remain playful.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I think we lost Josh. Give him 1 second. We'll let him finish his thought. And anybody watching, just know Josh is tuning in from Australia, so a couple disconnections there.
Yeah, I keep saying that I'm disconnecting because of interactivity. Just to finish my point, we've got to keep the play. We've got to continue to play. Playful parenting, teaching each other through play. You know, teaching our young ones with play. Like one thing that I've done with my son just recently, because I'm getting back into Magic the Gathering, because we need to find a way to come back to the table. He's 6. He's not old enough to play Magic the Gathering, but we sat down and we made up our own TCG, a very silly one called Dragon Wars, and we cut pieces of paper up. We drew like the card backs and started doing the art and making up silly dragons. And that
That's
is
awesome.
the sort of thing that we need to be doing with our kids and each other as well. And that's what I try to do as a game master. So play.
Oh,
It's just so
Play, play, play.
delightfully wholesome. I just need to say that was beautifully wholesome.
Exactly.
It's just like, just to let you know. That was like, oh.
yeah.
I'm gonna speak to the whole situation specifically with teachers. This may be controversial depending on who you ask, but the whole thing, it is sad, especially since teachers are underpaid, underappreciated professions by and large. It's one of those things that I feel like goes back to what I was saying of, is the tool the problem, or is it just making us ask certain questions? And for this, I mean, school has always been institutionalized for me. Like, you go in and you learn a bunch of things that however than half of them you're probably not going to use. And what you pick up from school that is useful is how do you deal with other people? How do you talk to your peers, your classmates, and all of these things? But a lot of the lessons, I mean, I had a bunch of history lessons. My country's history, I've had a bunch of trigonometry and physics problems, and I enjoy science and physics, but I don't use them in my day-to-day because I'm not a physicist and a scientist. I'm not in the STEM field. And surely if someone was, they will find use for that, but they might not find use for their literature courses or something. You know, like a lot of it is based on you come in and what do you memorize and how well do you test? And that's what we put the value on of like straight A students and, you know, honor list students. Like, they are the ones who have tested well and have the memorization skills. But oftentimes there are people who graduate below the mark or have repeated years who end up becoming some of the most creative or ingenious people in the world. So it's like, maybe the students are using this because, and I'm not saying this is a fact, but it's worth looking into. Are students using this because there could be a better way to actually teach them? There could be a better way to keep these children engaged in the actual learning than what you're allowing teachers to do. Because there's only so much a teacher can do with the format of you come in, I give you a test, you pass, okay, next year.
Yeah, or is it just ignorant?
You know, like, there's better ways to teach people.
You know, exactly.
I think.
Is it, you know, ignorant evolution in the sense, like, look at back in the day, like, you know, don't rely on that calculator. You know, you're not going to have that in the future. Meanwhile, like, now everyone has one on their cell phone, you know. Look at back up from the TV, you're going to burn your eyes, but put VR glasses on, like, right here against your eyeballs, you know, like, so, like, things change, you know, and we have ways that we look at it. So I think, you know, maybe partially you could be right. I think, like, when the teachers say students can't do math or read or write or, you know, basic things, it gets scary. But you're right, maybe some of that is just this is just fluff. They're just using the tool to quickly get through it. Maybe we need to evolve that learning. Like, all right, they have this tool, they have this calculator now, this advanced computer or whatever, right? So, like, let's change the way we do math. Now we teach calculus. Now we teach, you know, like, I don't know, maybe it's going to evolve into something new. But I see your point there, absolutely, and I could totally see that. You know, I get.
And also, just to clarify, I don't mean to say that teachers are lying. Like, I do believe that this is a problem. I'm just saying that is the solution to problem, you know, just ban AI, because that's not the practical solution anymore.
No, I see what you're saying. We got to evolve kind of how we're teaching and how we're doing it now because of AI being there. Yeah,
I agree. Because, like, back to sorry, you go, Seth.
Oh no, I was gonna say this is the same as I was talking about with like how we handle the infrastructure. Like, okay, look, how we've done it worked great up until this got introduced, but now we need to change how we teach and how we test because the things changed. Sorry. And if we try to use the old formula, it's clearly not going to work and it's going to do more harm than good. Mm-hmm. Because the point that we're trying to teach kids and we're making them write a paper or we're making them do the math problem or we're making that, we need to figure out what is it actually we're wanting them to do, what muscles we're wanting them to flex, what things do we actually want them to learn, versus we're teaching them stuff mostly to test to make sure that they're learning how to use memory, but the actual details don't matter. Yeah, we need to figure out what it is we want to teach and how we need to change that, because the world of today doesn't work like that anymore. Like we all have a calculator in our pocket, but I'm really happy that I understand the Pythagorean theorem and all of that. Even though people are like, you don't use that. Like, I do it while grocery shopping, but nobody ever hands me a formula to figure out X in your life. So I think it is we do need to reevaluate how we teach and what it is we actually are. What ultimately is the lesson we're trying to teach children, how to get their brains working in whatever way. But then, of course, we can get into all the issues with, like, parents, which every one of my teacher friends has told me at the end of the day, it's not the kids that drove them out of that profession.
What's most important is to learn how to. It was like to learn how to think and to learn how to learn. I actually learned algebra from Magic the Gathering.
Nice.
That's how I learned algebra. When I went to math, when we started algebra, I knew it because my creatures needed X. My creature had X, so that would affect the game, and then X to cast spells. And I learned that through play. I learned that through the way that worked for me. And to go back to Nigel's point, there is an institutionalism of education. It's like you learn this way, and then AI is bringing in a disruption for that. Mm-hmm. If anything, they're finding a new way to learn with this tool. Again, it is both. It's hard to say that one thing is objectively the truth. Is it a tool or is it a trash? Right?
Well,
it can be both. Right?
Well, I think also. I was going to say, just to what you just said, it depends on if they're using that to learn or if they're just using it to quickly get the answer the teacher wants. Yes. And that's the problem that the teachers have, is they're saying, like, they don't understand what the fuck they're doing. I ask them a question, they plug it in AI, that's the answer, and they just copy it or paste it, or, so like it's one thing to use it to learn versus just use it to quickly get to the answer. And I think that's the kind of issue or the debate there. And I 100% agree with you. I think half of school isn't about, like, just memorize this, get the answer. Of course, yes, you can pass, get the grades, get through. But for me, it was always like learning how to learn. Like one of my best subjects was math, but it wasn't because, like, I learned all the fucking things and the answers, but it was because, like, I would look at it like, okay, that's the answer. Let me figure out why that's the answer. Okay, because you take this and you do this and that, and that fraction becomes this, and I get it now. I can connect the dots, and then that helps me figure out other things that aren't even math, because I can understand the process of why that works versus just getting to the answer. But that's also an old school way of thinking. A lot of my younger friends and friends that have kids, like, they definitely don't talk like that. They're just quickly wanting to get to the answer and stuff. And I see it in these videos. But again, like, it could be a lot of clickbait, dystopian sort of push. You kind of, you don't see everything. You're going to see what the algorithm lets you see, right? But yeah, I totally agree with that. Let's do this. Let me blaze through some of these little commentary things, and then we'll go through these handful of questions. Basically, I posted the whole tool or trash question to a bunch of groups and forums and things online, also within the Cybernation Uncensored community. And we had more than a handful. Well, we had dozens and dozens of people on each thing. Everyone had something to say. What I did is I grabbed a handful of what I thought was kind of the consensus I was getting. I grabbed the best of the best that I was seeing, the repeated thoughts and ideas, and I'm gonna kind of quickly summarize and blaze through these just so we can all feel the consensus of kind of what everyone is saying and doing it. And keep in mind, some of these are game masters, some of these are players, some are both. But okay, Ray Oliver says, the only thing I have used AI for is to make character art. It has worked well. Nick Kozamara, and again, anybody that's watching, if I butcher your name, I apologize, it's going to happen, but Nick Kozamara
It was
says,
AI.
It was AI. I used Gemini thinking model with the single player mode. I think the stuff I rolled on the tables, and it outputs some quick, cool descriptions. Some typos there, but I get it. He basically is doing solo player mode, and then he uses Gemini to kind of maybe give him some cool descriptions when he enters things, so he doesn't even have to think about it. It's almost like having a little GM there when he's playing solo mode. Interesting. Jeff Brown says, I have concerns about the way we gather data to teach these programs and concerns about the economic and ecological damage done by them, so I prefer not to use them. Or products by companies who do not produce or utilize generative AI or agenetic agents, or I prefer to use products Let's see. That being said, I can see how using them to help generate story hooks or come up with the names on the fly could be handy. I think one of you mentioned that too, like Josh, about the NPC names that kicked out back in the day on your video. But he says, but often there are already sites that have those kinds of tools that do not utilize generative AI. David Quartusi says it's saddening how people use AI to do the thinking in their place, taking notes, doing descriptions, coming up with story hooks. There's a whole load of them in the books. People are giving up on their opportunity to exercise their creative abilities, meanwhile polluting the planet and enriching corporations who base their business models upon stealing. And then he says, do these people play Cyberpunk by the side of Arasaka and Netwatch? I thought that was funny. Darren Bird says, if you live in our real world and somehow think using AI for trivial tasks at great cost to the environment and finite resources will, while enriching unsupervised corporations who steal and then monetize other people's artistic endeavors without permission is acceptable, maybe you need to do a bit more background reading on the subject of AI and educate yourself. And by background reading, on the subject of AI and educate yourself, AI summary, but actually read some environmental impact reports, watch some news reports about how people are enriching themselves by spreading false information using AI, and from your own conclusions by thinking for yourself. Like, don't just go to AI, search and get your answers, what he's saying. And then this was very interesting to me because there's a little bit of back and forth, and I want you to see, like, this shows how there is just an ethical, moral dilemma and debate around this, and people will just start arguing. But Jamal Powell puts AI is good for, and then he lists these things: putting an entire source book into it, such as Notebook, and using it to accurately reference game rules and concepts. So he puts the whole PDF in, and then he can quickly ask questions, and it comes up in AI. Using AI art to quickly generate conceptual character art. Vibe coding companion apps, and then play testing homegrown rules. Now, he posted that in my post, and then somebody replied to his post. Jamie Lappin Place says, and he puts a reply to each one of those things. So when he says, putting an entire source book in and then getting a summary of the rules, he says, you have Control F. So he's saying, like, just search, like in MacBook, Control F, find and type in a certain word, and it'll come up with that rule or the places where that word is, And like devil's advocate, yeah, you could do that, but you're still gonna have to go through all 80 something references of that word being mentioned in that 300, 400 page PDF, whereas what he's saying is plug it all in, ask a specific rule, and AI will give you exactly that. You don't have to search through all, but I get it. And then Jamie responds to his thing about using AI art to quickly generate conceptual character art. He says, Google image search. And it's like, yeah, you could do that. That does make sense, but you're not going to get everything. I've used Google image search to try to create different things, like, for instance, with our pitch deck for one of my films. And we didn't have certain stills from the actual film. And I was like, let me just grab some items in these scenes that'll represent kind of what I'm explaining in this pitch deck. And I sat in Google Images for like over an hour and still didn't find exactly what I was looking for, where I could have probably within seconds went to AI and went boop, 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 description, and boom, got what I wanted. But I didn't. I kept searching. I ended up, a photographer friend of mine had something. But anyways, so again, I can devil's advocate debate this. You know what I mean? The next thing that he mentions is vibe coding companion apps. He says Google search tools already make or use the official app, if there's an official app there, and then again, you got to sit there and create it. AI can literally give you the coding within seconds. But then he says, play testing homegrown rules. Remember when Jamal said that, and Jamie replied to that part saying, yourself or real people. Nothing you said warrants AI usage. And I can debate that. I get what Jamie is saying, like, yeah, absolutely. You can just get real people in yourself and play test those homegrown rules, but can you find enough players that will do it, that have the experience, that will take the time to learn the game that you want, to test the home rules? Can you schedule all those players with you to actually have the time to play test that? I've done it. I've created games where we did do play testing. It took months to orchestrate, get it done, take the notes, do it all, but we did it. But I get it. Like Jamal says, I could just go to AI and plug it in within seconds and get the play test result answers I need to utilize to make my game better. So I can see how they can debate this, and I can debate it both ways, and I see the efficiency. I can be the devil's advocate there. So he said that, and then Jamal came back. Let me finish this back and forth, and then I'll pass it over. You guys can. I'd love to get your feedback on this little argument, But then when Jamie came back and gave all those examples of other tools he could use other than AI, Jamal came back again and says, AI can gather more information from your text quicker than using that Control F. And he says, Cyberpunk RED has an excellent official app, but few other games do. See, he's responding to each one of those points. Then he mentions about the artwork, and he says, stock art won't be your character, and a lot of it isn't very good. Also not even wants to drop money on a largely inexpensive hobby to hire an artist. Not everyone hates AI. Get over it. So you see, it's getting a little heated, you know? They're starting to like tell each other, get over it and shit like that. Then Jamie comes back again. So just say you're lazy and don't want to read and the very source books that you're learning the game from. There's VTT options and homebrew apps for most TTRPG systems. Telling an AI to poorly code for you is no excuse. There are countless options for custom character portraits, Hero Forge, video games, not to mention many tools online for creating these yourself. Also, surprise, it's still not your character because you told AI what to do. Everyone should hate AI. It's harmful to the environment and society. But I'm glad you feel justified in being lazy and pretending to be smart whilst the AI you use for a brain is sucking our world dry. See how intense it can get. And again, I can debate it both sides. I can totally see where Jamal's coming from and where Jamie's coming from. You know what I mean? But it just shows what a touchy subject this is, you know, and how intense it can get. But that was just simply asking AI, tool or trash, give me some feedback and some questions for our round table. And then that just kind of, and that's not the only one. There was other ones too. That was just one of the ones I copied because it was a great example of the back and forth that can happen. But let's go around the table. Josh, you're top of initiative. What do you think about all that? All that commentary.
Just for my understanding, it was, what was it? It's Jeremy and
Jamal. Jamal was the one that uses AI in those different ways, and then Jamie was the one arguing about it, debating.
Okay, cool. Jamal and Jamie. Jamal uses AI. Jeremy doesn't. Okay. It's exactly okay. First things first. My whole coming into this, I was, you know, not nervous, but like, is the word prepper? Like, I was like, okay, I've got to make sure that I know what I want to say, how I want to say it, and where I'm coming from, because it is such a hot button topic. It is two very strong sides, like you said, and then like it's something that we just need to be having these conversations about, so that we can grow, we can develop the world for it to be in this world. Like Seth has said, it's not going anywhere. It's here, and we need to find a way to communicate with us. It's not objective. I would say that Jamal, who doesn't use it, if I'm correct,
Jamal uses it.
By saying it's objectively one thing, you've got to allow yourself to have the conversation and allow things to develop and grow. And I would even say that like that's not a good way to help us do that. As a whole, I am middle when it comes to it. I am unbiased with it. It has hurt a lot of people. It has done a lot of damage. But again, it's also helped a lot of people, and it's also doing a lot of things too. It's ups, downs, and all arounds.
And you said earlier, it's not going anywhere. Something to consider too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What I think is most important here is how we have these conversations, how we think, how we learn, how we're using it. It's by villainizing it, we are making it a villain. By saying that this thing is bad, it becomes that. People are using it for both ways. A sword is a tool. A wrench is a tool. It is how it's used, how we see it, and what we do with it. It's hard because the more we fight each other over it, the more damage it probably does. Because like one fundamental thing that I know is that if you tell someone that they're wrong, they will fight you back about it. It's just an instinctual thing for us to protect the things that we believe in. And you know, that's one of the most beautiful things about us, is that we do fight. We fight each other, and that's something that's not going away either. You know, but at the same, I would say stoicism. Go learn stoicism. Go look learn how to think, because it's really important in these times. Like, we need to know how to have conversations, how to approach things, how I can grow and change. And like, one thing I want to commend you for, Rob, is that you are reflecting on all of this. You are, like you said with the teacher stuff before, maybe it is just my algorithm. Maybe it is something that it's not dystopian, and I'm only just getting something like put up and that's viral and stuff like that. We need to be questioning all of these things There's a theory called mimetic value theory, which was by Rene Girard, a philosopher and knowledge worker, which is that we need to make sure the things that we're feeling and thinking are truly reflective how we are, because we can get into these memes, if you will, in a lot of ways, and get locked into how we're approaching things. Do you truly believe it's bad? Do you truly believe it's good? Go reflect that, and then have conversations like we are today, courageously, because hard conversations are hard. Saying something is hard. I would say that people that use AI are not as inclined to say that they use AI, because it is much safer to say that you hate AI, or that AI is the villain of this. We created AI. We created the words that we're using. We created the stories that we base our moral compasses and our ethics on. Learn stories, learn philosophy, learn how to communicate with each other. Because Jamal, if you say to Jeremy, hey, you're wrong, you're dumb, this is wrong, everything's wrong, you're not helping Jeremy learn your point of view. You're on the attack. It's more important to learn how to listen. As a game master, the most powerful tool I have in my tool belt is to listen. And also, there's a lot of power in not having an opinion, which is a Stoic principle. Mm-hmm. It's okay to not have an opinion. Have an opinion when you need to have an opinion. One thing is being so flowy as I am as a game master. I know I do need to take a stand at points, and there's a whole, one of the Stoic principles is justice. My gut will tell me when it's right or wrong. I would say that in this moment, attacking someone about how they're seeing it is either only going to make them dig their heels deeper, fight you back and defend, or disengage and then not have that conversation, which I think in all three of those situations, nothing good is happening. So.
Yeah, good point. Nigel, what do you think about that, the Jamal and Jamie argument, that I read, and the sort of moral dilemma being a hot point and stuff? What do you think?
You hear a buzzing sound, that's just my laptop's fan going off the fritz. But my thing is, a discussion like that loses its value the moment you start attacking someone personally. If you start calling someone an idiot because they do a thing that you don't do, you've lost this conversation. It no longer holds value. When it comes to using AI for mundane things, I'm sure that the first cowboy said the same thing about the car. And I'm sure that people said the same thing about the elevator. And I'm sure that people said the same thing about newer cars and everything. Technology is going to evolve. And saying in a broad sense, everyone should hate AI, that's categorically, objectively wrong. And I'll give you a straight example why. Medical technology. You have any idea how many doctors in the world would benefit from not having to chart their medical stuff anymore because AI can do it accurately for them? How many lives that would save just because the doctor now has more time in the day? Science technology. How far can we send our probes? How far can we get into the stars if AI was more compact and can be powered by a space probe? How much better our calculations would be when it comes to discovering new planets and stars, figuring out if there is another Earth analog, figuring out if another planet thousands of light years away could be Earth 2, and figuring out solutions to get there. There's an objective fact that AI has good implications. It's not all good. Nothing is ever all good. But it can have good impact. And categorically saying right now that objectively AI is bad, that's just wrong. Mm-hmm. Plain and simple. That is not true. Because when you think about these things, AI has many implications and many potential use cases benefit, if we can figure out how to prepare a society for it, would make our world better. That's the key. If we can figure out how to prepare society for it. And how do we do that? By discussing, by talking, by having a civilized conversation, and not resulting to insulting each other for one person's use of something versus someone who doesn't want to use it. Like, there is value in understanding why people do things that they do and why they don't do what they do. And the moment we start resulting to insults, we lose that value. That discussion is over. And we lose a potential discussion that could have had something more beneficial for society.
Yeah, I think also within what I totally agree. I think within what you're saying, though, I think like the reason Jamal and Jamie have this argument, and a lot of this stuff I see with the back and forth, is the difference between it being like a tool, like a progressive of industry that might get you, into space quicker or to calculate that faster, versus it replacing things that are considered within the arts or the creative, right? And I see that line, like people are like, well, it's a tool, like I don't mind using it for search engine or like calculate that math quicker or find that for me faster. But then there's people that are like, yeah, but why are you having it write your poem or write your description or create that artwork? And like, I see a difference when it's used like, I don't know the right word, but you know what I mean? Like industrialized or like kind of as a cold tool versus like into the creative, the humanity side of being a creative human and stuff. And I can kind of see that line between both sides of that debate, But again, like, from the past of being, no, absolutely. But again, from being a past musician, I went through this with DJs, with digital turntables, from samples to recording. I used to record bands in Pro Tools and used to do it analog on tape versus digital, where now you don't have to pull the tape and redo it, like it just digitally delete, re-record, go, that quick, Same with music and stuff. So like on the creative, I can see it evolving, but there's going to be that sort of growth period that's going to be real awkward. And I think that's where we're at. And I think everyone has kind of touched on this, and I totally agree, where like the only thing that's going to fix that is discussion, right? Everybody talking about it, evolving, trying to be part of it. Don't just blanket call people names and say, this is evil, that's good, that's great, that's bad. Like, it shouldn't be that black and white. I think it's evolving, and so should the discussion and our interpretation and our thoughts about it. Nothing should just be set in stone, in my opinion anyways. And that's what I'm getting from all of you, it seems, too. But Seth, what do you think about that? That argument back and forth, the heated debate, and just the fact that happens and stuff. What do you think about all that?
Well, so kind of just break down the parts of it, like the idea of like, I'll use AI to see if it works. Okay, but we're talking about a hobby, and there's an actual large gulf between does it work or is it good? Is this fun? If like, we don't have to do play testers anymore. It's like, yeah, but the AI can't tell you, is that fun? How that works, because when we are looking at entertainment, that there's a difference between like, I've got the words on the page, the math works, to is this actually a fun thing to do? When it comes to like, I could just load the entire PDF library in, and I could search for it and I could find it. Like, I can see the appeal of that. I'm more of a Control F guy. Really, if it comes down to it, when I run, I still use a physical book, because one of the things that I feel one of the best tools for game master is understanding the rules. One of the issues is that we got to back up to get to where I am. When I would play with like certain friends internationally online, especially during COVID, we all learned how to like do a lot more online gaming when COVID happened. And a buddy of mine, he would always like load it up on the VTT, and you just click a little button, do I hit or miss? And I realized the problem is, it's like, dude, I've played this game with you for like 20 hours, and I have no fucking idea how the mechanics of this game work, because it did it all for me. And he's like, wasn't it great? It's like, the problem is I'm not learning the game. Like, I don't understand how the game works. With RPGs, coming from the generation I did, which was very crunchy. When I started with like AD&D, then went to Cyberpunk 2020, and I got really into like the building of all the stuff, like where does it get a plus, where does it get a minus, what's the cost of stuff like that. And I got really into the weeds, man. But it did require the fundamental of understanding of where do those numbers come from to do it. So if you are just using a lot of the tools for it, you actually aren't becoming a better player. You become that situation where the GM's like trying to like, guys, we've gone over this. This is how the game works.
Right.
Once you understand this little bit, you can start saying like, oh, we can use this to our advantage. Of in simple terms, like if two of us attack this guy, the second person to attack it gets a plus because that's how the mechanics of the game work. And once you understand how it works, you can understand how to really get the most out of it. So I feel a lot of I'm going to use AI or I'm going to use the technology so I don't have to learn it. It's like actually not going to be playing any better.
Worse, yeah.
Because part of the games when it comes to that is that strategy of like, okay, now that you understand the basics, now you can bring the pain. Now you understand that this affects this and this affects that. So you need to manipulate it to where this affects this, and now you've got the benefit. And then it becomes the people that learn the rules are declared power gamers or some shit.
Yeah.
Just because they knew where the numbers came from.
Right, just because they actually knew the rules. No, but like you said, how do you know where you spend your experience points on which skill if you don't know which skill is actually influencing what you're doing? Like if you don't know what the rules are, you don't know what. Yeah, absolutely. You need to know.
And one of the things like with Cyberpunk 2020, when I would listen to people talk about how difficult the combat was, it always blew my mind because it was like, I could open up that book and if you asked me a question, I could find the answer to your question, blindly grabbing the book, flipping up. I would be within one page of whatever it was because my understanding of the book was that complete. I didn't always know the answer, but I knew where to find that answer because I had looked for it. So I think that, the ability to look up that answer that you're looking for is great. It saves a lot of time, and I love it. But there is a lot of value to understanding it. And I think if you're using technology, whether it's AI or whatever, to replace the learning it's ultimately not as good. But I think that feature is great. It just stairs versus elevator sort of thing. The idea of like, well, I can use it to get some rough character art. Neat. And okay. I think that's neat. I think that's novelty more than anything. Like it was like, oh, look at it. I can make my elf cool. I love the suggestion of like, hey, why don't you go on Hero Forge to make your character, which a lot of people do. But I think that's the best freaking hack, of like, well, why don't I go into the Cyberpunk 2077 and I can build the face of my character really realistically and I can really do it. Like, then I'm just going to screenshot it. Like, well, that's fucking awesome. I do think that there's alternatives to just about everything, and I think the idea that AI is going to do it better all the time is just such bullshit. By the way, I do lean more on trash, mostly because of how it's used. I can see that. So I see the idea of I want me to use AI to bypass a lot of other stuff that could do it just as good, if not better, but I just don't want to put any effort into it, is not a winning argument for me.
So it's like a tool that could potentially be used in a trashy way sometimes,
I see it as a tool that's got a lot of trashy applications. When anybody tries to hoist up it can give my elf pink hair. Well, big fucking deal. So can Hero Forge.
Yeah.
If I may push back on that point just a little bit. I don't disagree, but my idea is that it's about accessibility. Like, what if you are a 9-to-5 guy with a corporate job and a large family and you do not have the time for any of these things? It's nice to still be able to know that, hey, I can still get involved, I can still be part of this, or I can still have this one time a week game that I can run. I don't need the pressure because this tool is here. Like, I think there's the counter argument to that the proper counter argument to the idea that it's replacing all of these things, which is valid, is that accessibility. people who generally wouldn't have the time for any of these, or what if I don't own an expensive PC that can run Cyberpunk, or what if I don't understand any of these things, what if I just don't have the time, but I still want to be part of this. I can devote the hours to playing, but not much else. Then this becomes a tool where I can still be involved in the space without, it gives me a way in, and it gives me the ability to be part of it, even though I don't have that much time to me. And I think that's valuable in its own ways.
I do see the value, but it's usually treated as, well, that's why we don't have to learn the book. It's like
that I agree with.
So it's well, so the reason, like, I can see the argument and I can see that defense. And it's like, oh, that's good. Well, let's be honest. Who we're talking about and who's going to be using it, and that's actually a very small minority of it. And I think that the idea of, like, I want to bypass all the hard stuff, but at the end, I don't have that satisfaction that actually doing it would do it. It's a fleshlight, man. Sure, it hits all the notes, but it's not the same thing at all. I mean,
I did not think that fleshlight was going to come into the conversation. That's great.
And I was just going to say, and here we were at the beginning, before we went to record this, Josh was worried about cussing. Like some cussing.
Oh, yeah.
And now we're talking fleshlights. No, I'm kidding.
The story there is that, like, I used to just be gosh darns and all that. And now I swear, because it's important for me to be in the spaces that I am as I am. But I just want to touch on this topic too, just quickly. It's all subjective. It's all subjective. We all have different understandings and ways that we apply it and how it's used and what's useful. Like there's very few things in this world that are objectively true. And what I'll say to what you're both saying here, which is, like, I don't have time. For me, it's accessibility versus, like, it's case by case. Like, the most important thing is, like, how we see it and how we learn to communicate and how we learn to with our offense and having opinions. And how we come together and talk with each other. Because if someone feels like they can't share, it's like, hey, like, at this present time, it's allowing me to access being able to be a part of something that I want to be a part of. Fuck yeah. Use your fleshlight. But, like, also look for opportunities to connect with other humans. Because, like, I'll say that as a game master and just a human in general, I love the connections that I have, the ability to help people learn, like that, like, don't rob other people of that opportunity, because, like, again, it takes a village, it takes a guild. You got to find ways to connect and form each other. This has been a great conversation because we've come together and we've connected and we've shared our opinions and we've built a neural network because of neural coupling that we feel like we can express our ability, like our feelings and where we are and, like, what we think of it. You know, we're not calling each other dummies for thinking a certain way or doing a certain thing. And if you are saying to people, hey, you're dumb, you're evil, they're not going to want to share what they're wanting to say, and they don't get that opportunity to grow and learn. So, like,
it doesn't help him. By the way, I really you need to make a shirt now. It just says, "Fuck yeah, use that fleshlight to the GM."
Yeah, we need one. GM Roundtable, something about fleshlight. I don't know.
We're really fleshing it out, if you will.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
good.
There you go.
That's the title of the video.
I was just gonna say, GMs and fleshlights. So look, I've got about a dozen community questions here. Josh, I know you're a little bit pressed for time.
I'll put my hand up if it's getting to that time.
That's what I was gonna say. Is let's do this. We got about a dozen here. Let's blaze through them, and instead of all of us answering every question, I'm gonna go in order of the initiative, and whoever's up is gonna answer that question, and then we'll move on to the next one. If anybody has something to interject or add to, feel free to do that. But let's see if we can quickly get through these. We've got Rolf Heislitner. I'm butchering the hell out of that name, but Rolf. He basically says that essentially he uses AI to generate character art that he can show his players. Sometimes they see the character before they meet the character. Sometimes they see it afterwards, depending on how much I am improvising. The players enjoy seeing the characters. That said, unless you are quite specific with your prompts, the character can come out looking rather generic. I don't use it for interpreting rules or writing any content for my players, basically, that interact with. For me, it's a tool. But our group gathers for the creative aspect. Here's his questions. And Josh, why don't you take this first one? We'll just go in order of initiative here. But he says, how do you manage the heated viewpoints about AI at the table? My group is quite passive about it, but seeing some of the comments, I can imagine tempers flaring at other tables, and some tips might help. So what do you do to manage the heated viewpoints of AI at the table?
Start swearing and talking about fleshlights. And what I mean by that is be ready to offend people, and how you handle offense and what you do with that. Be open to criticism and critiquing. The more courageous you are with that, the better things will be. And that goes into learning how to navigate these interactions, and knowing what to do. I get excited for myself now when I find something that offends me, because there's not much that offends me, which is very handy as a game master and a storyteller. There are things that I think are evil in this world and things that I don't agree with, obviously. But at the same time, the more I understand, the better I am. So when heated conversations come up, have a game plan going in, learn some philosophy, practice, boundaries and all this stuff. The better position you are in for when these things come up, the better you'll be able to navigate them. Because the first thing that you will probably find when these things come up, you'll have an emotional reaction. You'll be like, oh man, I'm being told I'm dumb, or man, I'm being told that I'm wrong. You got to clock that, look at it, take a beat, take a breath, and then come back out with the conversation. And it takes practice. It's not something that will happen overnight. It's something that you have to find yourself doing in a moment. If you miss it and you do have a moment where you have reacted, reflect on it. Was I being a dick there? Did I give an opportunity for myself to grow and others to grow, and then go from there? It's very important as a game master to be in that position, because you are the head of the table. You've been vested the narrative authority and the position to be able to run the games that you're running. And if you think that it benefits your games, it benefits your games. And that's what's important. But remember, you are a part of a collaborative storytelling social construct. Speak to the other players about it. Have this conversation. Be brave. Be like, hey guys, I know that you guys are not neither here or there nor there. This is where I'm at with it. What do you guys think? And then if you sit down at another table and they're like, I don't fuck with it. Yeah, okay. Well, why is that? Be curious. Be courageous, and be kind, which is in the C. So
I like you saying take a beat too, because GMs, you're a game master, you create all this stuff, and sometimes when things go off the rails, or someone has an opinion about something different than yours or something, it's hard to not take it personal, because it's something you created. It's your baby, or it feels that way, And I love your idea of, take a beat, take a breath, think about it, try to see it from the other perspective, maybe go into it a little bit prepared, But no, I love that. I think you got to be flexible, and not every table is going to be the same. So read the room. I love that. Next question, I'll blaze through. This one's mine. It just says, how have you used AI to aid in preparation as a GM? Kind of already went over that. I've used it for general editing sort of tools. Maybe not necessarily as a GM. In GMing, I've used it in editing some game stuff that I wrote, like a summary for Avoid All Land, where it found some grammar issues, missing punctuation. I kind of use it as an editor when it comes to GMing. But as far as descriptions, plot twists, NPCs, campaign settings, all that stuff, 100% from my mind. I am very much into campaign creating. I created that quick campaign builder that R. Talsorian put out in the DLC. I put out the roll on the plot twist table I've made, the weather tables, the NPCs. I love creating. I'm just a creative at heart. That's why I've written comic books, and I've been a touring musician. I play every instrument. From filmmaking to SEO work to creating websites, because if I come up with a fucking idea, I have to manifest it just to see if something happens with it. I can't help it. I'm a chronic creator, and it's just who I am. But as far as AI with for a GM, it's been kind of an editor, a little polishing tool, if you will. But all creative roots and everything spark from my mind. I can't have it any other way. I think, like Seth said earlier, it won't be in your voice otherwise. And if you keep just leaning on that from the beginning, it's not you, and it's not going to sound like you, and it's not going to be you. So me, as far as GMing, very little, but as kind of like a little bit of an editor. And I've used it for some art stuff too, conceptually. Not so much recently. In recent times, I rely on some artists and people in the Cybernation Uncensored community to help. Even have done some commission work and stuff for character stuff. But in the past, I would use it for scenery. If you look at some of my older streams, like a scene might come up of a desert thing, cyberpunk style, and I'll find like a free domain image and then cyberpunk it up in AI. And I've done that before in the past, but very little in recent times. Next question, this one will go to Nigel. Do you have any examples of it working really well that we can learn from? Do you have any examples of it going horribly wrong? So I guess ways that you've used AI where it's worked very well and you've learned from it, and times have you ever used AI where it's gone horribly wrong?
I'm going to assume this is regarding the tabletop space.
Yeah, I think so.
Ways where it's worked really well. I agree with Seth's point earlier, like you should know the rules, you should know the mechanics because it's part of the game. But there are certain things where having a quick, handy thing that tells me where something is extremely useful, especially when in my tables, we value the in-character moments. We try to limit the out-of-character stuff as much as possible. That includes how long it takes for someone to roll their dice, or out-of-character musings. We try to make it as like role-play heavy as possible. The problem is I run several systems in the week, and memorizing them all after coming from one system is kind of hard. So to me, for example, I'm running Savage Worlds Adventures Edition, Suede. And there are mechanics there of like, there's a table that has fear, and if the players fail the fear check, this happens, and you have to roll for it and see what happens to them. And like, remembering where that table is can be very hard when Suede uses two books, the core book and then the companion of whatever you're playing. At some point, I memorized what page it was, but having the AI tool there, knowing that it's there, and that if there is a certain thing that is escaping the top of my head right now, I put it there, it shows me, okay, we're good, we keep this flowing. It's really useful if you use it right, is what I'd say. Yeah. And the best examples of it being used really well are, this is really dumb, but in my D&D game, because of certain things that happened in that game, my players ended up in a carnival that was never planned. How that happens is, you know, every game master knows weird stuff like that happens. And because they're in a carnival, they're looking at, are there any games we can play and things? And like, this carnival didn't exist. I came up with that name 5 seconds ago, but now they want to play games, and I'm not going to tell them, no, there aren't. I didn't prepare any. And I didn't want to make it simple as, okay, roll D20, see who wins. I type into AI, like, I'm in the middle of a D&D game where my players end up in a carnival. Can you make me a bunch of games they can play that are based on the 7 dice that D&D uses? And it came up with a bunch of very simple mechanics. And I told them, okay, we're going to play this game. It's called this. I come up with a name, and this is how it works, and I give them the mechanics. And then it's like, okay, now we just roll dice. And like, the thing about that game is that there was a reason they're there, and it's very important that they play parts of these games. And it all came about because of one very strange decision that I didn't account for. And like, sure, give me enough time, I'll come up with my own game, but not in the next 5 seconds
right.
of them asking me. Like, so it's really useful.
What? Absolutely.
The other thing, the thing that didn't go so well, is whenever I try to make generative art to, again, visualize what I want the NPC to look, AI art has a very hard time capturing facial expression and like genuine expressions on it. If you ever try Gen AI, like, it's always that ID picture, square format, like straight. I think that's probably why they call it soulless. So like, it's not good if I want my players to understand the expressions that are being made, and it's not good for making the players understand that this is the personality this character has. That's up to me, and that's fine with me. It's good for the visual aspect of like, he's wearing red clothes and this kind of mix and match. But I'm never gonna rely on it to tell players like, he's a strong, stern expression, he's staring daggers into your, straight into your soul just from looking at you. Like, AI is not gonna capture that. Maybe few years down the line, but right now, no. Can't do that.
Did you ever have a horrible experience where like you quickly generated the NPC and he's like, oh, he's so evil and tough and staring you down, and then boom, it pops up for your players and he's like,
it's like
funny.
Hey, you know, it's like a cartoon.
Those are the two expressions you get.
I run a game that's based on the Expanse TV series in sci-fi, and I had it run this like menacing armored villain that I had. And the reason they're armored is because they're hiding their identity, because it's a big political conspiracy in game. I just typed in very, very blatantly, like, sci-fi. I'm running a sci-fi game. I need a menacing armored villain whose face is hidden, that is intimidating, larger than life stature. And it gave me Darth Vader.
That makes sense. Yeah, I can see that.
You're not technically wrong,
right?
But
I was waiting for it to be like doing the peekaboo. You know,
because it's like it gave me Darth Vader, but the background's like he's standing on the moon, and like he has a bunch of minions that are the size of those things. What are those things from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory?
Oompa Loompas.
Like, about the size of Oompa Loompas. Just because I told them that, hey, I want him to be larger than life. Like, they're literally, they're literally up his waist height. That's not what I want.
I think that's a good example.
I think the mood you were trying to achieve.
Yeah.
I think it went to a different fan fiction.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's funny. Next question. This one's for Seth. This is a good one. He says, what risks do you see in using AI? What risks do you see in using AI for GMs at the table? It was worded a little different, but yeah, what risks do you see in using AI for a GM at the table?
It's basically just hit the exact same things I talked about, where a game master, it's best if you do know how the game works, and if you are relying on it to the point that, say, well, you can just run the game, I don't have to put all the time in to learn how it works, I don't need to know how the nuts and bolts work, right? I don't need to know how to work an engine to drive a car well. And okay, if you don't understand how your game works because you have relied on AI to tell you all that stuff, you are never going to master the game. You're going to get caught flat-footed when the first time a player walks in and they understand why all the numbers do what they do, and they are using it to their advantage. And all of a sudden, like, so that is a problem if you rely on it too much. If you're worried about giving them like, this is the perfect image of every character ever, like, you know what? That actually doesn't really help my game. It's cool, but if you're like, oh, I don't need to worry about making a good story, I just want to have a story of like, you're not going to be as good at improvising. You're not going to be as good as that. I don't need the perfect picture of the perfect NPC to help me visualize it. I don't need Darth Vader standing on the moon with some Oompa Loompas. I will say that is not the mood I'm going for. Right. But it's kind of like when people talk about like with metal mats or whatever, right? And like it's like, oh, it looks exactly like it. It's like, okay, this is what they look like in my game. I've got a piece of plexiglass on the table. I've got a vis-a-vis pen. I'm leaning out awkwardly. My lines aren't straight, but we can picture it in our head exactly what it is. So having a tool that draws that room perfectly, okay, I mean, yeah, it's cool, but it doesn't actually make it that much better, because that's not the part that it needs. So I think the problem that the GM will suffer is if they're relying on it too much, that they aren't exercising the brain. Once again, stairs versus elevators. No, you don't need to memorize all the rules and master all the rules before you run your first game. Your first game is probably, you could look at it like, guys, we're all going to learn this together, and we're about to make 1 billion mistakes. Let's rock. And like, that's how you should start.
Yeah.
But that's what the intention of. But if we do this for 6 months, by the end of it, I won't even have to think about the fact that I know how this stuff works. Exactly. If you're using AI to make that first step easier, you are never going to get at that part later on where you understand how it works and you're not even cognizant of all the calculations and stuff that goes on in your head when they ask you a question, and you can go, okay, got it. Let's go. So I think that is the give and take. Yes, it can be really helpful if you don't have that time, if you don't have the thing and you just want to get it there and you want to play with your friends and you want to have fun. That's cool. I support that. I don't support the outcome if you don't just put the shit down.
Yeah.
You know? Put the fleshlight down, man. Just and understand how it works and how to do it. So
I love
think
how
that's.
You finish that? Sorry.
No, I was about to say, I have like a 10th of my brain that is completely dedicated to fleshlight humor. So,
hey, I'm all for the callbacks, but listen, I love how you worded, that's not how you're going to master the game if you rely on that from the beginning. And I think there's something clever in that in the wordplay. Like if you do that, you're not going to master the game, and you're trying to be a game master, not a game novice, right? So like it's important to learn the rules. Try to learn this game from the in and out so you can be the master of that game and run it for your players. Yeah, excellent point. Okay, this next question, this one goes to Josh. It's from David Peterson. He says, we might have dabbled in this a little bit. When is it appropriate to use AI for preparation, and when is it appropriate to use AI for improvisation? Seems like an interesting point of discussion. I typically stay away from generative content in my games, only rarely asking it to make simple lists of names or items during prep. We kind of touched on that a little bit in the using it for preparation versus improv, and when it's appropriate in that, like, every table's different and you got to talk to them. So let me find a better let's go to the next question, something that we haven't already kind of got into. This is from Land of Wolves. Big supporter of the CNU community too. Love Land of Wolves. He's one of the players in my monthly one-shot Cyberpunk RED team as well. But he talks about how this topic is something I've been involved with, debating and discussing for a long time, and my thoughts are pretty consistent on it. In tabletop role-playing games is best understood not to be a replacement, but as a tool, one that depends entirely on how it is used. It's funny, we all said the same exact thing. For me, AI sits alongside maps, minis, playlists, and notebooks. It supports the experience, but it does not define it. I still build my worlds, I write my stories, and I run my sessions. That creative responsibility stays with me. AI just helps smooth the edges. And his first question here is, to what extent of using AI does it become too much or not enough to you as a GM? What do you think, Josh?
At what point does it become too much for myself?
Yeah, I think he's saying,
or is it just in general what I would think?
I think in general, I think
he's
saying to what, and I think you kind of answered it there. It kind of depends on who you are, but to what extent of using AI does it become too much or not enough? You as a GM.
There's a book called, for me, I'll go into both. I'll answer both. There's a book called Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. For people out there, for some reason my brain, maybe I should use AI to look up the author name. For some reason I'm not grabbing it. Who was it? Sorry. Yeah, Sly Flourish. Thank you.
Sly Flourish?
Yes.
Wait, there's the Robin D. Laws one. Okay, I was like, that's right here. But
Sly Flourish. Thank you. See, I didn't need to use AI. It's one of those things where, like, there's a point in that book that's very important, and it is prepare what is good for your game. Like, prepare what works for your game. If it works for your game and you are getting what you need to get it out, I think that's where it's at. When you are trying to do everything because AI has, like, sped you up, you can do the art, you can do all this, you can do that. It's like, where are you in that? How much of that is AI? And that comes back to what Seth was saying about you and YouTube as well. You gotta make sure that you have that. There's something very charming about getting things wrong. There's something very charming, and it's pen and paper for a reason. Leaning over the GM screen and drawing, doing a silly little guy as a goblin. When does it become no longer like this thing that we're trying to figure out together? Making sure I'm not getting off the point here. I think that it is subjective. It's up to the game master to find where that is. Making sure I haven't lost my point here. Sly Flourish, subjective. It's up to the game master. My brain is switching off because I'm getting sleepy. Give me 2 moments. Just give me 2 seconds here. Okay. Well, I'll answer my answer to it. I tend to not use it very much. because this is the point I was trying to make before. I think it's very important to train your brain to be able to do things that you need it to do, especially when it comes to game mastering, which is such a omni-skill role, right? So it's very important for us to practice things so that we can get in there and we can do things on the fly. Or it's really important to learn how to fail, how to look dumb, how to make mistakes and then grow together. Like, that's very important. It's a big theme at my tables as well. One of the things I set as an expectation is that I'm going to fuck up. Just look at a few moments ago where I had to take a few beats to think about what I wanted to say there. It's important to show the blemishes, to take the time to be like, you know what, I'm gonna fuck up. That's okay. I'm gonna get things wrong. I'm gonna learn. We're gonna learn together. I think that we need to do that. So it's important to, again, use it as a tool when it's good for what you're trying to do. Like when Nigel said that in that moment, I needed that for this, and we had the best fucking time.
Yeah.
I think that that's what you need to do. Be subjective with it, use it where it applies for you, and then just make sure that you don't feel bad about failing and getting it wrong. You know, there's one thing that I do that I practice as a skill. It's I forget names all the time. That's like, we just saw that again as well. So I invented a game called the name game. And I tell people that I play the name game. And I play with that mechanism of like forgetting people's names. Like, I just want to let you know, if I'm looking at you like this, I'm trying to figure out your name because I'm playing the name game. I'm trying to train my brain to recall names, and I'm getting pretty fucking good at it.
Nice.
And that has just come through accepting failure, making it novel and fun for everyone involved, and embracing that I'm going to get it wrong. And I've got to say, I'm getting really good at it. I did screw up the name just before as well. It was Jeremy, or is Jeremy and Jamal, or is it Jamie and Jamal?
Jamie and Jamal, you got it.
Jamie, yeah, I knew I was saying Jeremy.
That's funny, yeah.
Point in case.
No, exactly.
Fail.
And look, I think you saying how, like, you know, you as a human might fail, but then like you realize it and you go back, hold on, give me a minute, gather your thoughts, get it right. To me, that's more honest, and also allows you to change opinion as you learn new things, and it shows that it's a process. It's not just a, you know, thing, and it can be influenced by everything in reality around that question and your answer. But AI might not do that. AI might just hallucinate and give you the wrong fucking answer and won't take a beat to go, wait, hold on, wait. Nah, you know what? You know, and that's the beauty of the human aspect to it is I'm guaranteed I'm always going to get something honest from you as long as you're that honest in yourself and that opinion enough to like be humble and, you know, be able to basically say like, fuck, let me regather my thoughts. Maybe I had that wrong, or hold on, give me a second. Okay, no, this is what I'm thinking about it. And I think there's something real beautiful about being human in that versus AI that probably won't do that, and might even make a mistake. And, you know, I think they call them hallucinations, you know? So like AI can absolutely be confident with something completely wrong. Whereas I think what you just expressed is, you know, being humble enough to say, fuck, hold on, let me gather my thoughts. Maybe, no, I had that wrong. What was his name? Or let me do this. And, you know, and that's much better than AI just giving you something wrong, you know? So, all right, next question. Let's see here. This one should go to me. It says, how do you personally define responsible use of AI in your TTRPG games, and where do you draw the line between assistance and replacement? What ethical concerns do you think GMs should consider when using AI, especially regarding artists, writers, and player expectations? We kind of dabbled in this a little bit, but I think it really just comes down to the table and players, like, and the GM, right? Like some GMs might excessively use AI for artwork and things and polishing and completely writing. Maybe they didn't create and they're not enough. Well, that game might come across a little shallow. He might not be as good at improv because he's always relying on AI, and situationally, session-wise, maybe scene-wise, it might not flow or be the greatest experience because of that. He's constantly having to type in, get a response, do it. There might be too much of that going on. But I think when it comes down to the ethical issue of, what's tolerated or not tolerated at a table regarding artists, writers, player expectations, is you have to discuss that with the players. I think it was Josh said it earlier, or Seth, I can't remember, but somebody was talking about go over it with your players. If certain ones have problems with using too much AI or something, keep it open to discussion. Well, what's the issues with that? Talk about it and then find a common ground. All right, if it's too much, all right, cool. I won't lean on that as much. I'll do this a little more. Oh, that bothered you? Okay, no problem. Fuck, we don't need to do that, And like being flexible, and each table is going to be different because players are different. But I think there's no right or wrong set answer. Every table is different. Every player is different. Every GM is different. And like Seth said, it depends on the expectations. Sure, you just want to casually jump in, play with some friends, have a little casual fun, walk away, not be so invested in it. Cool, nothing wrong with that. Do that. But you're not going to evolve and really get the game. You're not going to understand it and really work with it and make it fully immersive. And it's not going to be everything that it could be if you're just casually playing with it on face value, So I think every table's different, and every GM is different. And I think as far as drawing the line between assistant and replacement is really just up to the GM or the person using it. Some people that aren't that creative are just absolutely okay with replacing their creative thought with AI, and that's them. I don't like that. I'm not like that. I would rather create and then have AI polish a little bit, like Land of Wolves does, like we've all kind of expressed. But I do understand, and I can accept the fact that not everyone is creative. Not everyone can write a song, draw artwork, come up with a plot twist or a cool fucking idea, or improv like that on a live stream when players throw a wrench in the works, or go to that circus. You know what I mean? And maybe you'll rely a little bit on AI. Maybe you'll rely a little bit on improv skills, whatever. But I don't think there's a right or wrong with that. I think every table's different, and you just got to kind of feel it out. You got to read the room. Let's see here. Next question. This one goes to Nigel. In 5 years, will most GMs be using AI as their co-GM, or will the pendulum swing back towards AI-free tables as a selling point? What do you think?
That, to me, depends on what we mean by AI. Because, if it's making artwork or writing plots, I don't think the most successful GMs, whether personally or professionally, are going to be using AI to do any of that. It's a creative space. I seriously doubt that creatives as a space is going to sit by and let AI take over what should be a creative endeavor. I don't think the next 5 years that's going to happen. But if we're talking about AI tools that are note-taking, so you don't have to keep writing down while running the game. You can listen and something takes the notes for you. Or, I don't know, for people who are streaming, maybe they have an AI editing tool that makes their workflow faster. So they can edit their streams and get that out of the way without having to do all of that. Or some form of name generator. I don't think it's too bad, but I think it's going to be part of the space in some capacity just because of the nature of technology. It's gonna be there. And I say that in the way that AI is part of Photoshop. Digital artists use very small, minor AI tools, even if it's just the thing that straightens lines out when they draw something, with a straight line or a perfect circle. It's there. The tool is already there. You can't avoid it. How it's used, I don't think creatives are going to let it take over the most creative aspects of a game. But the tool is going to be there in some capacity, no matter how large or small. I think that's true. I think it's going to be there.
Totally
it depends on the person and how they use it and what they use it for. But in some capacity, that tool is going to exist.
Yeah, no, and
even if it's just as simple and innocuous as note-taking.
Oh yeah, yeah. These next two questions are kind of similar in that they elaborate a little on that. I'll just read the questions. I don't think Seth, I don't think you need to answer these unless you see something different that we haven't touched on, but these kind of, I think, are similar. But are we headed towards a fully AI-generated campaigns that players can jump into like a video game, or will the human GM always be irreplaceable? And I think we've kind of touched on that on the creative, and I think, that's going to depend. I think some GMs might fully rely on AI, some might use it a little bit like a tool, and I think through that evolution, yeah, there's probably going to be a deeper RPG video games that more feel like a tabletop role-playing game, because AI is going to just get that much more personality out of it. I think, it's evolving. It's a technology that kind of touches on that. But Seth, did you have something to add to that, or do you think we kind of got that? I can move on to the next question if you
I think we've hit it. The one thing that we haven't mentioned is the idea of the full AI GMs. Is the stories I've heard about the problem with that is since AI is usually just wants to please you so much that they're actually not very good at challenging players because they're it's like it feels like too many orcs. But you're absolutely right. Let's just sort of. It's part of that impersonal thing of my AI girlfriend says I look nice, so my AI GM says I should have more gold. But like if it's like do like the video game is generating world around you, it's like, oh, that's pretty neat. I mean, okay, but
yeah. Let's take this next question then, since we already kind of dabbled in that recent one. But it says, and this one might also be something we hit on, but is relying on AI a crutch that stops GMs from developing their own skills, or is it ultimately an accessibility tool for burned out or time crunched GMs? And we kind of talked about that elevator stairs, use it or lose it thing, but is there anything to add to that, Seth, or do you want me to go to the next question? Because I do think we kind of...
Yeah, I think we've pretty much...
I do too. Beat that one.
Pounded that one to death.
Yeah. Next one. This one I think is pretty good. Take this one. Should players be told when major elements like NPCs, plots, maps are AI generated? Why or why not?
Since I've never used it for my games, it's like I don't see any reason why I should be like, just guys, so this is made with AI. It's like I can't imagine myself ever saying that, but at the same time, I can also see my GM actually didn't put any effort into it. They just make AI and do it. So I feel that if you're actually making whole parts AI, I don't think it needs to be the dirty confession, but I do think it needs to be like acknowledged in the sense of, once again, if it's not worth your time to write it, it's not worth my time to read it.
I like that.
I mean, even if it's like, hey guys, work was a crunch this week, so I made this map with AI. So careful, some of the roads might not actually connect. Like that. I get that, but should I disclose exactly what it was? Like, I don't know. I don't think it's necessary to have to have that type of disclosure, but I also don't think it should ever be a secret. Mostly because I joke with my players, warts and all, about how much I screw up. Like, everybody's brought up name generators. Like, oh man, back in the day, I used to grab a bag of Doritos or whatever food I was eating and take an ingredient. We once played an entire campaign in the city of polystyrene. It's like, I need a fantasy name.
Yep.
We're in Olestra. And I mean, I don't think it should be like we have to, just so we know if we have made full disclosure. But at the same time, I don't think it should be a secret.
I think Land of Wolves, who asked that question, he mentioned in his sort of description of how he felt about this topic. At one point, he mentions in his description something similar. But I thought it was interesting, his angle. He said something along the lines of, like, I don't think a GM should have to disclose it if they're just casually playing with friends and people and doing that, and they want to use it to help their game and to whatever extent, whether it's polishing or full on using it. But if it's a paid game, if it's a paid GM, then I want to know as a player, like, because I'm paying that GM for their creative mind, and so I can have an experience in their mind, in their game, with their creative, because I like them. And if they all of a sudden are outsourcing to AI and shit, I'm not really getting what I paid for. And I kind of see where he's coming from with that a little bit.
If it is paid for, absolutely. And it's just because it's a bunch of buddies hanging out and they're just doing their thing. It's different than if it's transactional. And I do find that is an actual big difference. So just, not much more to add. I think we hit it all.
Yeah, exactly. Next question. Training data, stolen art, and corporate AI. We only got a couple more here, by the way. Training data, stolen art, and corporate AI companies. Does any of that actually matter at your home table, or is that a bigger picture problem? And, I don't think it's a bigger or smaller picture problem. I think it is literally what AI is and is dealing with. It's obviously, stealing art or gathering, as much information, as they put it, that it can from users and from the internet to kind of get a consensus so it can give the best answers and results, right? So it is stealing art in that sense. So I get that, training data, right? And corporate AI companies, does any of that actually matter at your table, he says, or is it a bigger picture? Like, I think it's all hand in hand, and I think it just matters who you're playing with and who you're working with. Like, if you feel, like me personally, I feel it's more of a tool than trash, but as we've discussed, there's levels of using it and stuff that we all have because of our own personal ethical and moral standards and things, right? We all have our own view on it and the extent we'll use it. But I think that doesn't take away or add to the bigger problems of, like, the environmental stresses, the power, the water, the ethical, dilemma that artists say, like, it's stealing my art. I'm a real artist, and here it is just grabbing all art off the internet and creating its own. And, like, I get that, but that doesn't change whether it's at a small table or a big table, a big worldwide problem or just a localized problem. It's still exactly how it works, whether you call that a problem or not, or just a process of the evolution of AI to get to the point where it's eventually going to go. So again, I don't see a difference in small table, big table on that. I think all those things are inherently in AI, and it's just a matter of opinion on how you look at it. Next question, this one goes to Nigel. This is the last one. Could AI ever replace the emotional intelligence and group chemistry a human GM brings, or will it always be tool only?
As it is, no. I think people have a fantasy of what AI is, the whole Skynet or iRobot or whatever media you have, and maybe one day that's what it is, but right now all it is a collection of information and the ability to algorithmically determine what it's going to spit out. Not a single part of that is emotion. Not a single part of that is soul or creative. That is a machine. It's not going to replace, and this is why I said that it's probably not going to take over the whole creative space of tabletop. Is that tabletop is great because it's role-playing. It is emotions put on the table in mechanics. It gives people an avenue to explore emotions they might not be able to. It gives them an avenue to do social interactions with little to no personal risk, to the social aspect of it. And AI is not going to replace that. AI is not going to remove or going to replicate the emotional aspect of it, because at the end of the day, what allows us to feel emotions are other people. It's you and me at a table doing this together. That's what draws out the emotion. And people have a natural tendency to know when something is fake and when something is, manufactured by a machine. Like, we all can basically tell. AI art is getting better, but there's still trademarks. Like I said, when you have Gen AI produce an NPC, you can see that it's AI. You can see that someone didn't draw this. And even then, like, all of these things, storytelling, role-playing, tabletop RPG, all of these things are, if AI did it all, the emotion's not going to be there because it's incapable of emotion. Emotion is how we as humans express to each other, and tabletop is about expressing to each other as characters in the story. AI is not replacing that. I don't think it's capable of replacing that. Maybe 100 years plus in the future, we develop sentience and reach a singularity, but I think that's unlikely. I don't think that's possible. I don't think we have the technology to replicate human emotion in the genuineness that we all enjoy it in the tabletop space.
That makes sense. I tend to agree. I think, it could eventually evolve to that. Who knows how long, right? Could be 100 years or whatever. It's anything's a possibility, but I agree. I think, and I think we all agree, it's more of a tool than anything. And that being said, I think it's not fully there yet. I don't think it's going to replace a GM on that emotional level. I tend to agree with you on that. But look, I think the consensus here in this episode is it's definitely more of a tool than trash. I think we can all agree on that. but there are so many details within that statement, with the way it's used.
There's a million trashy ways it can be used.
There you go. It's a tool.
I think the best way to put it is, it's a tool, but people are trash.
yeah, the ways it can be used and who it's used by, absolutely. But no, I think we agree. It's not it's not a black and white answer. It's not just a cut, dry subject matter to just discuss and have. There's the answer. It's not that easy. And that's why I think this made such a great topic for this episode. And I appreciate all of you, coming on board and making this happen and discussing this and being open and honest about it. I think, Josh, like you said earlier, this subject is touchy, and it was a little, I don't know what exact wording that you used, but to be brave enough to talk about this publicly and things like that, because it is a hot subject, and you'll get people that will hate you for calling it a tool or even accepting it in the slightest. And then you got people that are just full on into it, and if you're not enough, then they'll start name calling and stuff. The debate can get very extreme. So I appreciate everyone for diving into this topic and being really honest about it. I plan on putting everyone's links in the description. So just calling out to anybody watching, there's a couple things I want to request here is, one, if you have things to add to this subject matter, anything that we discussed in this episode that you agree with or disagree with or just have an opinion about or a different angle to think about it, please leave a comment, because I do plan on revisiting this topic in future episodes with other GMs, maybe even having some of the same GMs back to re-dive in as things develop with AI. But I want to account for the community. So if you have things to add to this conversation or questions or whatever, please leave them in the comments. And then also, check out the description. I'm going to put links in there to all the things that we have going on. All of us are GMs and creators, and we put ourselves out there, and we do it because we have a passion for tabletop role-playing games and this whole community and gaming and stuff. But I'd be lying if I didn't say that we really appreciate the support and the validation that comes with that passion and hard work and getting the feedback from people and the support. So please check out those links. Go sub, follow, check out all the things that we have going on in our individual communities and links and stuff. And we'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much. Take care.
Cyber Nation